It's like delayed going into second. Just grab a handful for you. But I don't have second and third. Whoa, look at this. Oh my goodness. Is that the clutches right there? Oh, I just took a bath. There we go. Tell there is no clutch material on that one, and this is our reversed. There we go. Now we can pound it in a little bit further. Finally got all the parts for the transmission. Awesome. All right, welcome back to Salvage Workshop, ladies and gentlemen. So today we're going to keep working on the D3. We've got it to the point where it moves back and forth the way it should. The hydraulics work. The blade is in amazing shape, doing what it should be doing. And now I want to do a full service on it, and then we're going to put everything back together. And we're going to dive into some other little side quests on our way. But let's jump right into that service so we can get the engine and everything else ready to be used. All right, we got a few things we're going to do. We're going to put a new air filter in it. There is water in the radiator, so we're going to drain that and put actual coolant in. We've got a fuel filter, oil filter. The positive battery cable is questionable. So I've got this one. We're going to have to get some parts to make it work. We're going to make it this one's technically a ground cable. We're going to make it a positive cable, and we'll mark it so. And then we're going to do some wire loom on some wiring. Got a couple different kinds. We're going to change the engine oil. We're going to check the final drives. We're going to probably get to installing side covers. They may stay off. Belly pan's going on. The nose is going on. The hood's going to go on. And the whole seat assembly. I'm going to start pulling some of this out there. I've got it out there running, warming up, so the engine oil will be nice and hot and we can get it all dropped. Okay. Unfortunately, I do see a little metallic flake in this oil. That's not a good sign. Slow down now. Should only be about 3 gallons of oil in it. There we go. We'll let that drain out. I'm going to see if I can find another copper crush washer for this drain plug. Looks like it has 2 of them on it, and they don't look great. I might have one. All right, here's copper crush washers. Let's see what we can find. one's not going to be big enough. And I'm betting these are going to be too small as well. Maybe not. That one looks like it'll do it. It's not exactly the right size. It's a little big, but I think it should do what we need. And it's thicker than, I think there's 2 of them there. Slippery little sucker. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with that. And then I'll maybe see if I can order the correct gasket for it. But I'll peel off the old one and we'll put just the new one in there. All right, here's our oil filter. Fuel filter's back there. Super easy. There's our filter. And then you can see the clutch plate box right down there, angling the oil right into the pan. Here's our new filter. I don't know if you guys seen these, but it's a drum funnel. So essentially it sits on a 55-gallon barrel. I like to use the white barrels because you can see the line of oil so I'm up to right there of used oil. So all you do is basically flip the lid open, and as you can see, it's got different like draining ridges, and you could put different pans or different trays in there, and then the hole sits on top of the fill hole, and it's got a little drain plug. And so I leave it outside all the time. I don't ever bring it in, and I never get water in the barrel. Just sits like that, nice and secure. These drain funnels are absolutely awesome. So a lot of times I'll use it, take like an old filter, and you just plop it upside down. And as you can see, it's just gonna drain right down in there. And then all of this just funnels down in, and I leave the cap for the barrel just right there so that I don't lose it. So once this is full, I can cap it and get a different barrel and then dispose of it. I really like that thing. All right, now we'll keep an eye on that and we'll see if that leaks. It definitely looks like that front main seal is still leaking. That is unfortunate. So maybe the seal, I ended up putting it too deep and it hit a spot that was already worn out or worn too low. I don't know. I can definitely pull it forward. The new one, I'll have to replace it. The one that's in there can't be pulled forward, or the pulley itself is just worn out to the point where I got to get a new pulley. I don't think so. I could possibly machine it down and get a different size seal, but I don't know. For now, we'll just keep an eye on it. So then I just leave this here, prop it up like that, and the rest drains out. I really like these filters that have caps on both ends. It keeps all the dust out. All right, we're just gonna crank it over and get the engine oil kind of everywhere, fill the filter, and then we'll check the oil again. There, we got oil pressure. All right, now let it sit for a minute, let everything drain back down, and then we'll check it. But at least the oil filter's full. We got oil pressure, so it's probably going to be lower on the stick. I had it right at the full mark. Yeah, it's about right in the middle of the hash marks. So I'll let it sit, and we'll check it in a bit. All right, we're right there, right in the middle. So we're going to add some till we're all the way at the top. All right, next up, fuel filter. And it's dirty. All right, so we need to crack this little line here, this cap. Okay. And then we start pumping the primer pump till we get no bubbles. There we go. All right, no bubbles. Tighten that baby up. Fuel filter replaced. All right, good deal. No air in the fuel system, so that worked out well. So last time I drained the coolant, I tried using the plug and it is seized. So we're going to take the lower radiator hose off and we're just going to let it drain out that way. I'd like to get pure 50-50 coolant into it so that we don't have any issues with, you know, the dilution being wrong. Yummy. Quite a while back, I was given a whole bunch of 55-gallon barrels of coolant and automatic transmission fluid from a facility that closed. And so this is one of the coolant barrels. We're going to fill up these jugs with 50-50 coolant. And this is brand new coolant. It's awesome. Got this transfer pump set up. Try not to make a mess. There we go. That's 1 gallon. That's why we have pig wipes. So I'm gonna get some pig mats and clean this up. We now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 gallons of coolant for the dozer. And that did not take long, which was really nice. Put some coolant in this thing. So that's 5 gallons. I'm gonna crank it over and then we're gonna check it again. Coolant level was perfect. There's our green coolant. And I got it hot enough to the point where it opened the thermostat and started circulating, and we didn't get over right about there on the gauge. So we're in great shape with that. Put this cap on. One thing that I want to do soon, or I need to do soon, is this water pump, the bearings are starting to feel a little wobbly. So there are 2 bearings in there replaceable and a seal. It's actually fairly simple to do it. At the end of the day, I don't want to be out and having a leak. Yep, the valve cover is still leaking right there. I can see some drips. And actually, I can see the front main seal here literally dripping into that water down there. So I got to get that corrected soon. But we got fuel filter, oil, and coolant all changed. All right, let's drain the final drives and see what the oil looks like. So this is the fill plug. You probably can't even see that. That's better. All right, so here's the fill plug. Shouldn't be very much to come out of here. Oh boy, that is over full. That is a lot over full. So I'm wondering if when we take the drain plug out, are we going to find water in it? Okay, so when you open these, you normally should only get, maybe a drizzle, because when you fill them up to right at the drain plug, just when the oil starts to come out. That's got to be a gallon or more. The manual said 3 gallons for the final drives. Now, I'm not sure if that meant 3 gallons per side. Normally it would say 6 gallons if that was the case. I think it's gallon and a half, but I guess I could be wrong. I'll have to double check. I don't see any water coming out. So that's a good sign. And there's not a lot on that drain plug. It's a magnetic drain plug. Very little. That's a great sign. What's crazy about this is that it takes 30 weight oil to fill the final drives, not gear oil, which is surprising to me. There's some sludge coming out of the bottom, but it doesn't look that bad. And this is the clutch that actually was stuck. So I'm happy to see that. All right, here's how I'm refilling it. Got this in a bucket, transfer pump, hose. There we go. Just starting to run out. So I'm gonna let it drain out and then we're gonna cap it. I think it has 3 gallons per side. So I think it's 6 gallons of fluid for the final drives. All right, so we've got some oil leaking from behind the dash panel. So it can be one of 2 things. I think it's actually maybe just one thing, the oil pressure switch. Let's take this dash panel off and we'll find out what's going on back there. These 2 bolts were loose. Can't quite tell, but there's nothing on those. Either this line, this little plastic line here, is bad, or it's leaking out of the gauge. And I'm kind of leaning toward it's the line somewhere, because it was not all oily in here when I closed this up a while back. So I'm going to pull this off and we'll check it. All right, here's the little oil line. And this is the end that was in the machine behind the dash, and this ferrule is actually loose. So it's moving around in there. So I think what was happening is oil was leaking out right there because the plastic kind of wore out. I don't know if I can get it off and reuse the ferrule. I'm gonna try. And then this line, there was an air line. So there was this little thing, and this little thing had a little piece that's broken off right there that essentially was an air filter gauge. It told you how plugged your air filter was. It's broken. I'm not going to use it. So I think what I'm going to do, this is where it went into the air intake. I'm going to get a cap for that. We're going to plug that hole. I may try and reuse this line, the air one. I'm pretty sure it's the exact same size, and it's longer. And the reason I want it to be longer is when you take the dash out, this thing just pulls. I think over time, just taking the dash in and out when we were working on it, kind of wallowed out that fitting and messed up the line. I don't know. I don't really want to use this tube, but it's what I've got for now. I might have some copper line. I don't know if I want to use copper. We may try it. Let's see what I've got for fittings. We may try and get these off and see if they can be used again. But this line is going to be too short. I want to go with this one. So let's find a plug for this and see what we've got for lines. I've got in this cabinet some gauge stuff. So I do have a little bit of copper line. And then plastic line. I don't want to use these. These definitely always crack. I keep those around just because I have them. And those are some ferrules and fittings. So let's take that. And then we need a plug for this. Pretty sure it's going to be like 1/8 pipe. Possibly that guy or one of these new ones. Those look about right. So let's grab this and see what we can cobble up. All right, see if we can get this fitting off. Yep, came right off. There's that one too. These might be savable. Let's try and reuse these guys that we had off the machine and see if we can make it work. So this one definitely looks like it's been reused before, I can tell. But it doesn't want to go on very far. So I'm going to try and open that up a little bit with a punch. All right, I got the ferrule on that one and on that one. And they're much tighter. And this line is longer, so it's not going to pull as much. So I'm going to blow some compressed air and brake cleaner through this tube because I want to get all the dirt out. Here's the little plug where that little air line went. That one seems to fit. That one fits and it looks better. Looks like it's always been there. Not that it matters, but we're going to go with that one. I'll tighten that up. And then the oil line goes from right here off the engine block up through the hole. So let's see, feed that end in there. And I'm going to look in, my copper lines were not long enough. I'm going to look into a better oil line for this. I would much rather have something either braided or solid. If you guys have any suggestions for a trustworthy oil line that's not plastic. Now this plastic is way better than the plastic lines I have, the clear ones. There's like an outer coating on this and over the inner black plastic. So it's definitely way better quality. But if you have suggestions on what I should use for this, I would be more than happy to hear them. Let me get this tightened up and put the dash back together. The oil pressure switch is leaking. It's leaking out of the oil pressure switch. So this oil pressure switch sends power over to the hour meter to basically turn it on. That's how it gets power to run the hour meter, which this machine doesn't even have a working one. So I think for right now what I'm going to do is take the 2 lines off, we'll mark them, and then I'm going to cap that. I don't have another pressure switch. We did clean this one a while back thinking it would be good, and it's not. Let's get another plug and we'll replace, well, we'll cap it for now. Oops. That one's live. Should have unhooked the battery, but I forgot. Alright, so I'm going to go get probably a bag or something to insulate that with. Let's pull that off now. Yeah, you can see the oil. Careful with that. It's leaking right out of the seam right there. Cap that. I think what I might do is just take this and just put it right on that lead. Right. I've got that one basically just both terminals are on there like I said. Labeled it to positive on oil pressure switch, and then these 2 wires I zip tied them together, also labeled them, and then bagged it just so nothing touches the wrong thing back here. A couple zip ties on there. Got the plug installed, and I will work on getting an oil pressure switch for this thing. I need one anyway because I'd like to get the hour meter to work, but let's give it another start and we'll see if it leaks. All kinds of bugs in here. This is the parking brake mechanism on the D3, and I've done a bunch of stuff to it already. It was worn out. There's a real deep groove right there, so I welded that back up. This hole was wallered out, that hole was wallered out, and this whole bottom piece here was, it was only about this thick, this little band here, and this is what rides the parking brake bar rides on this. And so it was completely worn through and the bar was falling down. So I got this chunk of steel, welded it in there. I'm going to file a notch to be exactly the width of the parking brake bar, and then that should be good to go. So I've got all that done. This is the little tooth that engages with the parking brake bar when you set it. Well, it had a pretty deep groove in it, and this other little groove is for a spring. And so I made a new pin for it and pressed it into the tooth, and then I was able to just file a notch right where the spring should go. So that's good to go. And this is the main pin that this thing goes through, and then it pins into this hole there, and the other end is keyed, and it keys into this little mechanism. So, and it had a pretty deep groove right where you see those welds. So right where that weld is and right where that weld is, there were 2 grooves. So I just filled them with some metal. We're going to run up to the shop and put it in the lathe and turn it down to size. We'll take this with me just so I know it's going to fit in that. This end, I'm not too worried about it fitting. I guess we'll take this as well. There we go. Good enough. And then these, what I filled, ride in that bracket. But this goes over, and it's a circle. And you can tell, I took a pass, you can tell that there's other spots that are out of round in that, because those dark spots that didn't cut are kind of worn in. But I'm not really too worried about getting it perfect. I just wanted to fill in the groove so that when it goes through this bracket here, it wasn't binding, because it was binding before. Now, it's just smooth in that bracket. Like that. Yeah, that'll work. Alright, let's take this back down and get it all assembled. Ah, shoot. I need this to be in there. So much tighter. It was just sloppy as heck. This thing would go like an inch like that. Now it's just a little bit. Good enough for me. The main reason I even did any of this was broken. I needed to put some metal there. So I went with a much thicker piece on that bottom. I also filed the little slot right through there with a file. So the bar will slide right there. And it's got teeth on it. And this little paw essentially comes down and grabs on that bar, setting the parking brake. And then the spring pulls up on this when it's not set to keep it up out of the way. Much tighter. Get this bolt tightened. So I had to go get some more oil for this final drive. So let's pop this guy open and see if it's over full. Maybe this is on there. I think it's going. Yeah, it's moving. Good. All right, drum roll. Do we have a milkshake? Are we over full or are we right on the money? Let's find out. You're right on the money. It is right at the level. Doesn't look the greatest. These plugs are 1.5 inches. So you can use a square 1/2 inch drive, but it looks like these have been egged out. We'll just use the big socket. Okay. Well, I don't see water coming out of the threads yet. That's a good sign. It's about the same as the other side. Not great. Like, it's old, but it's not dirty or milky. It's pretty thick. That's probably gear oil. we're putting SAE 30 back into it. So let's let that glug out. There's our oil. It is definitely a gear oil, not engine oil. But there were some chunks of just like sludge at the bottom. The magnetic plug was pretty clear, so I'm actually really happy with that. I think it looked great in there. Let's put some new stuff in. All right, there we go. Making a mess. Come on, you stick. I am an absolute professional at making messes. Then again, I don't think you can do this work and not make a mess. I mean, it just happens. Drain plug, actually fill plug, not the drain plug. All right, final drives are serviced. So a while back, I checked the bevel gear oil and popped the top off, and I'm pretty sure it was perfectly clear. I think we'll pull that same cover off right now and just double check, and if it looks good, I'm not going to change it. Ooh. Well, it's a little dirtier than I thought. Yeah, I think we're going to go ahead and change it. It is dirtier than I remember. A little bit of sludge on that drain plug. Not much. But that oil looks about like the other final drives did. Looks like about the same amount of oil too, 3 gallons maybe. Alright, so there's the bevel gear housing. I reached down in there and I wiped out the whole thing with a rag. There's just a little bit of just dirt in there, but the bevel gears look amazing. No damage to them, no missing teeth, so that's good to see. But one thing, the plug, this magnetic plug, it did not have a gasket, so I cleaned that up, and I was able to get some gaskets from Costech. Whoop. But I was able to get some gaskets from Costech parts, and let's get one of those thrown on. So just like that. Beautiful. To my knowledge, the gasket part goes up and the copper part goes against the plug. If I'm wrong on that, let me know in the comments, but that's how I've always done it. I'll hit that with a wire wheel real quick, get the last off, and then we'll get ready to put some oil in it and put the cover back on. So there we go. We're going to go with right about there. It takes about 4 gallons to fill this, not 3. So there's 4 gallons, about 4 gallons in there now. There is a dipstick. and so we're gonna have to pull that, but you got to do it while it's running. So I don't want to start it right now. Let's get this cleaned up, and then we'll get that plate glued down. I need to stick a drill in there. There are literally only 2 grease zerks on this whole machine, and they are right there on that drive shaft. There's one here and one there, and I would go from the bottom, but I can't get the right angle, so I'm gonna have to come down from the top, just the way we're parked, and I don't want to start and move it. So a lot of times I like to go under and wipe the excess grease out. I did quite a bit on this back one because there was a bunch of junk coming out. So I wanted to get as much of that old grease out as I could. There's a balance with grease about how much to put on, how much to leave on. In my opinion, there's too much. You can put too much. Some people's opinion is there's never a too much, but when it becomes messy, when it becomes to the point where you just touch anything and you're just getting covered in grease, I don't like that personally. So I don't want that on my machines. But everybody's got their way of doing it, and there's no wrong way, so long as you grease it. That's that's kind of important. All right, so I just got done looming all the wires. So put wire loom on them all. Basically covered all that wiring, put it in some protective boots to hold it, and got the oil line for the oil pressure sensor or the oil pressure gauge in loom all the way. I bent this this dipstick, so it was kind of like right here, really close to this side cover, and so I bent it and made it fit. It was in front of this. I made it fit down behind it, and then I had this clip. I had to modify it a little bit to not hit the air intake there, but I was able to get it. It's got a rubber on both sides. It works nice, so that's awesome. Got the whole coolant sensor all loomed up, and then the wiring harness goes all the way around to the alternator, and got that all covered and loomed. There's not many wires on this thing, so I mean, like I showed in the previous video, if you watched that one, I like that about this old stuff. So next up, we're going to pull this positive cable out, the main battery lead, and make a new one, because it's all kinds of old, and I don't know how good it is. And I had to fix it. Not a big fan of these leads that have, you know, that they got these repairs on them. They're useful and they do work, but this thing has had issues starting, so my thought is, let's just get a new cable. So got that out, and then got this all glued down, and I had to do one more cinch on the bolts tomorrow. I'm gonna let it sit overnight, let it cure. I've just got it hand tight, let it cure, and then I'll give it a good squeeze tomorrow. We should be good. And I think we'll probably also replace this battery, this negative here, and then there's a negative lead that goes from here to the transmission over there. Probably gonna replace that as well. I've got a bunch of cables, nice ones, and so we might as well use them. And then I still hang on to this stuff. You know, like this battery cable still does work, so I'm not gonna throw it away. I put it in my drawer and I hang on to it in case I'm in a situation where I need a cable for some tractor in the middle of the woods and I don't want to spend money on it. So I grab a cable like this and then I use that for the temporary time being, similar to how this machine has been. And then once I get to a point of fixing it, if I ever get to that point, I'll replace it like we're doing here. So this machine has been deemed good enough for a new battery cable. So let's go make one for it. Make some battery cables. All right, so here's the old positive cable. Now, the only cable I have that's long enough is this 4/0 battery cable, but this is a negative. And so what I've already done to it is I reamed out this battery lug to be able to hit the positive lug, because your negative terminal is always smaller than the positive terminal. So I want to take this boot off of this cable here so I can have a red boot, and then we're going to use this heat shrink tubing on this end and one on the other end so that we can mark this as a positive cable instead of it being black. I had some red cables that were the right, gauge, but none of them had this kind of crimped terminal end that were long enough. And so this is the only long, heavy gauge that I had with a crimped on terminal. I like the factory crimps on these. I think that they're far superior to, well, this style. This style tends to leave more room for voltage loss and more corrosion can happen there. So that's the reason I would prefer this style. That's why we're doing this. I could have easily cut this or a different one and crimped on something like this, but I want the cable to be really good, solid, brand new, fresh copper like this guy is. So that's the whole reason. Beautiful. Awesome. So this is just heat shrink tubing to mark this black cable as a red cable. All right, so I got a couple terminal ends here that we're going to crimp on. I think the one with the smaller hole is going to be better. They're both for 4/0. Strip off about, where'd my marker go? Strip off about that much. Perfect. All right, I've got this set to 4/0. which is the biggest this crimper can do. Good. Can't pull it off. All right. Put that all the way up over that like that. And I think we're going to have to bend this at a 90. All right, I just checked. A 90 would be very useful. Let's see if that's enough. I think we need to bend it a little bit more, because if it could come straight down right there, it would be ideal. And then it's going to be kind of tucked up in. All right, let's go bend that some more. I think we're going to call that good. Not coming off. Good deal. All right, finally for this end, I have this boot, which kind of goes like, I don't know, it goes like that. But the hole's a little small. This 45 doesn't really protect very well. I'm thinking I'm going to go with this straight one. So then it can kind of like just go down on there like that. So better than nothing. All right, 2 more battery cables in here. This is the negative lead to the battery. And then there's this one that goes from this location to the transmission. I've got it loose. So we're going to replace that guy. And I don't have another battery negative right now. All right, so this is the other half of that lead that we cut off. And I'm pretty sure it is pretty dang close to exactly what we need. It is a few inches longer. I'm okay with that. Maybe even not even a few inches. Awesome. So let's grab a terminal. Have this one. I'm going to go see if I have any others with smaller holes. So I did find another one with a smaller end. It's the same as the one that we put on the other cable. I'm going to get this stripped back. Good deal. All right, I found some shrink tubing. The other thing we're going to do is I've got some more of this covering. We're going to put this over the whole wire. This is linerless splicing tape. It is essentially a very thick rubber that stretches and bonds to itself. So you stretch it real tight like this, and you can wrap, and it stays and lasts longer than electrical tape. There we go, there's our new ground cable. All right, in order to get these routed right, I'd like to get the battery tray put back. But in getting it out, I thought, oh great, I'll just bolt it back in. Well, unfortunately, I found some issues. So there's a crack that goes from here all the way to there. Somebody tried to weld it. They added this and this as supports in the middle. It's rotted out there. It's cracked, well, repaired there. And then there's a crack here, right around this mounting block. On the inside, you can see the crack. Goes right there. And then over here, there's rot right through there. And then this whole corner cracked out. And it's starting to crack right there. So I think the best solution is to just find a piece that is about 17 by 22.5 and just either weld it to it or bolt them together. I know it's not great to bolt two pieces of steel together or weld them. It's better to cut out and get rid of the rust, but I don't really care in the long run about the potential of part of it rusting out. It's already rotting out, and I don't want to spend the time to cut and weld up every single seam the way it should be done. So if I can find something like 1/4-inch plate, and I can just bolt that 1/4-inch plate on the bottom here, then it'll really strengthen it, make it rigid. We can pull this piece off and then drill the holes right through it and then bolt this back in. So that's kind of my thought at the moment. I don't have anything here at this shop, so I'm gonna run over to the other shop and see what I've got for metal laying around. All right, so I got a piece of 12 gauge, which probably is thick enough. Then I got 1/4-inch plate. Both of those are large enough to do what we need. I think we're gonna take both. I'm leaning toward the 1/4-inch plate, but I always tend to build things too big, too heavy. But we're talking about a battery tray for a dozer, so I don't know. Make it heavy duty so it won't break. Probably good enough. We'll take both and I'll decide down at the other shop. that's going to make for one heck of a stout battery tray. And really, I could probably get away with just bolt, 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 and then batteries in the middle. But I think what I'm going to do, we may do that, but I am going to run some beads here, along there, and along here. And then I might throw some weld on some of these cracks, especially this one here because it's this block. And then maybe a little bit more weld on this angle iron. But we're not going to refabricate the whole thing. I think that's going to make every bit of difference that we need right there. This is going to be the top, and so we're going to flip it. We're going to wire wheel the bottom, and then we're going to paint this black so that there's paint on both sides of where the two pieces of metal meet. And maybe it'll make it so that it's a little bit more rust resistant for a little bit longer. That's the idea. Might as well clean up the top too. There's our painted side. This is the difference between a good quality vice grip and a cheap China one. These are the only two deep ones I have. This vice grip brand and this China one. And China is not winning. Well, it's not pretty, but it's going to be strong. And really, that's all I care about. Strong and functional. And it won't break. this side has these little pads, and essentially what I think it'll be good to have these for is when the battery is in there and any water gets in that battery tray, it's not going to sit between the whole thing. It's going to have a place to dry. And so over time, it won't cause this to rot out faster. Now, I'm not too worried about it, but we're adding this to essentially give the battery some cushion so it's just not vibrating down the metal in there. All right, I mounted the battery shutoff right in here. I can't remember where it was, to be honest, but it's a little bit easier. You'll have to lift the seat to disconnect the battery, but that'll be a good spot for it. And then I haven't decided if I'm going to use the hole here or if I'm going to use this hole here to bring in the negative leads. Well, I guess it's only one negative lead for the ground, the main ground, and then the other one will just go to the battery. Which the reason I'm trying to debate on not using it is that when I put that rubber in here, it'll cover the hole. The main reason to cover the hole is I don't want a mouse nest in here. I don't want to give an opening for mice to get into the battery box and just create a nice, beautiful home like I've seen in so many machines before. Not that they won't anyway, but if we can minimize the risk, we'll do it. So I'm going to hit this with some spray paint, and then we'll get ready to put it back in. All right, so this is a little battery shut off. So when you have it horizontal like this, it's on. You can turn it at an angle like that, and it's off. Or you turn it at an angle like that, and it's off. And so when it's down, it actually sits a little bit lower in the middle than when it's at an angle. And so when it's down like that, it's making connection in there. Essentially, you're breaking the ground. So you connect one side of the ground that's going to come from the body and to one side of this, and then the other side goes to the battery. So when you pull this up at an angle, either angle, it disconnects the battery, so then the battery is not connected to the machine. So when you let it sit, you really want to use the battery disconnect. It eliminates the potential for fires or other battery issues, or the battery running down because there's some sort of a draw. So I want to label it. So we're going to use a couple of these labels I made, some ons. We're going to do it, it's going to be off on both sides. That way you just know. You just know if it's like that, it's off, or if it's like that, it's off. But if you have it in the middle, it's on. So let's print a few of these. So there's an off. I'll make 3 more like that. Something like that, maybe. There we go. Guess I probably don't need to put it on this other side. You know, I already made them. Might as well do it. That way, if they peel off or they get ruined over time, there's a chance it's marked. And then there's just the common sense of figuring out how it works. It's not that hard, but I like having it labeled. Beautiful. We'll see if they last. All right, let's get our positive cable in. So got it all put together. So it's going to come up into the battery box here. Pull it through. And its cover can go last. Something like that. All right, got that all bolted up. And the cables run. So this one here is our negative cable, positive's over there. Got them all strapped down and run into the battery box. So I put in that piece of rubber we made. Negative comes in here to that side of the battery disconnect, and then this negative cable will be the actual negative cable that'll go in the battery. And then our positive is over there. I want to insulate that hole. So instead of going through that circle in the bottom, we're going to leave it covered. We'll just go through this because this is all covered by the seat. But what I want to do is we're going to take some of this hose, and this is a thicker one. We're going to cut it in half, and we're going to try and fill at least the bottom 3/4 of that hole so that we can keep it from rubbing. Over time with a dozer, you'll start cutting into that cable, and it won't be as big a deal if it's the negative cable, but the positive cable is definitely a deal. So let's try and get that protected. I don't really like the look of that. Let's see what other hose I've got. Got some much smaller fuel line. It's not too bad. Turn it a little bit. Something like that. I could live with that. There we go. I think that actually looks pretty good. Yeah, that'll keep stuff from rubbing. It's both sides, which is awesome. Yeah, we're gonna go with that. All right, that's the base for the seat. Still goes up and down like it should. I need to be able to keep the battery from bouncing around, so let's figure out a way to do that. I am just now realizing that this cover is on wrong. So this is the top of the battery clamp for the positive. It goes like that, and this is backwards. So I guess the only way to use it is to put the battery cable on and then just shove it like that. I don't like that, but I'm gonna go see what other kind of covers I've got. I might have one that's the right way. But that's how it's gonna look. Something like that. And then we need a way to keep this from bouncing around. All right, here's kind of what I'm thinking for the battery hold down. We've got a chunk of rubber to put over the battery, then a steel metal strap. We'll drill a hole here, a hole there. We will take a long bolt on each side of the battery so that it essentially pulls the battery down and keeps it from wobbling around. There we go. There's one of them. All right, here's what we got so far. Chunk of rubber, flat hold down bar, and this long bolt. So let's go out and get another one of these out of the truck. All right, so I think in here, a bunch of bolts and stuff. There we go. Actually, it might be some shorter ones. So this is the length that I've got. That one's identical, but that one's shorter. That might be usable. And that one's even a little longer, so let's see if I can find 2 of each. There's 2 identical. Those are the medium size. There's 2 of the short ones. And then I know these are going to be too long, but we'll take a couple in there anyway. So I'm betting it's probably going to be this middle one that works the best. And then a couple nuts to weld on the bottom. There's our rubber hold down that's going to be on top of the battery. Then this flat piece will go on top to actually hold it down. So the medium one, it sticks up about that much. So I guess we got a piece of rubber that's going to bring us up to here. And then there's a nut that'll probably bring us to there. So I guess it's only going to stick out a little bit from the bottom. So that medium one might be exactly perfect. This one's probably going to be too short. So we'll get rid of that. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the rubber out of the bottom. And then we'll get some holes drilled in the pan. Beautiful. Perfect. Exactly how we want it. Nice and tight. So a lot of times when I'm cleaning up chips, you put a magnet in a rag, and then you kind of just collect all the chips like that, and then you can take a rag and throw it in the garbage, and all the chips fall in the garbage. Yep, short one's too short. Gotta go with the bigger one. Alright, check that out. That battery's not going anywhere. Now I'm really glad I made that base plate out of 1/4 inch thick plate, because now I don't have to weld any nuts on. And that's going to hold it nice and tight. And then the negative cable, sling back there, get on that negative side of the battery. Positive, and just jump right into there. Sweet. I'd say the battery box is done. So as you can see, we've got nothing touching, not even close. Battery is properly secured, nice and strong. The cables are all protected. Our shutoff is underneath the seat. You have to lift the seat to get to it. So yeah, I think we're about ready to put this back cover on. Bolt the floor panels down. I've just got the center one sitting there. Got that one to put on there. These are the covers I have left. Got the front pedal cover, the back cover, and the center back cover. And then we have the belly pan and the front nose, the hood, and the 2 side covers I'm going to leave off for now. I want to fix this one up. I want to replace this mesh so it looks a bit nicer. The other side's not too bad, but underneath, I want to put some of this hydraulic hose protector on the lines that go to the little pedal cylinder right there. Those hydraulic lines right there. I'm going to put some of the protectors on because they go under the pedals and they kind of rub. And so I'm just concerned over time they're going to rub a hole. And then I want to put some protectors on these hoses at some point. But we're getting close to being able to doze with it. For tonight, I'm going to head home. Got a lot done on it, and I'll pick it up tomorrow. All right, so here's the seat that we're going to be putting on the Dozer. So I want to make a template of the bottom so we can figure out where to drill the holes. Unfortunately, this one did not come with one. And so I want to get this little rubber shroud off so we can get to the bolt holes. All right, so we can pull that up. gets us a little more access to where the bolts are going to go through. So I think we'll do 6 bolts. We'll do 2 here at the back, 2 here in the middle, and 2 here on the very bottom. So I think that'd be strong. I've got these bolts here. We're going to use these with probably a nut and then a lock nut, a nylon lock nut. So long as the bolt's long enough and so long as the bolts don't interfere with the battery below it, which I don't know if they will. And if not, we'll just use the lock nut. So we'll figure that one out once we get there, but let's see here. I think we'll make a template with this. Now, I think I'm going to get some tape. We'll tape that on there. All right, there's our template. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is the back. In the front. That matters because this spacing here and this spacing here is different, and I want to make sure to get it right. Because otherwise we'll be drilling a few more holes. All right, something about like that. I like that spot. The top seat moves forward right about there. I'm going to mark it. All right, we got 3 bolts in. So this last one, there was already a bolt hole right there in the front corner here, and it was slightly this way, but I didn't know how much more I was going to have to take off. And so now I can mark it, and then we can die grind it out a little bit. Sweet. Before we go any further, I want to put some paint on this just so it doesn't keep rusting. So let's wire wheel it a little bit. Nice, finally a seat in there. All right, I'm gonna get this bolted down, and then we'll do some sitting. So last night I had to run home really quick because my wife called me and said that her dad, my father-in-law, we thought he was having a stroke. And so he had driven somewhere to get some food and then had an incident where he wasn't quite acting right in a store and they didn't know what to do. And so somehow he ended up driving himself back home. And when my sister-in-law got to the house, he wasn't kind of responding correctly, so we rushed him to the ER. Come to find out, he had 104, 105 temperature. He was, delirious essentially, and, obviously there's an infection somewhere that's causing the fever. We don't know what it is yet, but he didn't have a stroke, so that is a blessing in itself. And so we just asked for any prayers you guys were willing to give for him, because we'd like to see him stick around a little longer for us and for his grandkids. So, I didn't get the seat put in, but obviously family is way more important than any of this stuff, and that's an important thing in my life that you guys don't see much, because I don't include my family personal life in the YouTube channel. I don't show my children, I don't show my wife, I don't, occasionally you'll see some of my brothers because they at times work for me, but I just feel that it is important to protect my children and my family life from the world. I think that there are the majority, probably almost 99% of you guys are awesome, awesome viewers, but there are people out there that I just don't want in our personal lives. I bring you into my life here at Salvage Workshop, and I think that that's awesome, and I truly appreciate your support. But in this situation, I just would like any prayers you're willing to give for my father-in-law and for them to figure out what's going on. So, yeah, thanks for your support as always. I truly appreciate it. Let's get back to the seat on this thing. Beautiful. Got these in with nylocks. I do think I'm going to come in and I'm going to trim these bolt heads just because I don't want something to poke the battery or end up shorting across something, so make them as shallow as we can. But other than that, the seat is weird. When you put it down, it sinks all the way to the ground. Whoops. When you put it down, it sinks all the way to the ground. You have to pull it up, and then something latches, and then you get the suspension back. So I'm not exactly sure what the mechanism is in there. I'll have to look, but yeah, this is gonna be nice. And you can adjust how firm this is. You can move the seat forward. And back. It's got armrests built into it. Adjust the, you take a nap in it. I don't know why you'd ever sit like that, but I guess you could fold it down. Maybe keep animals from sitting there and tearing it up. That might be a good idea. And then it does have a seat belt. Don't know if I'd use that, but. All right, another thing I want to add to the Dozer is a rear view mirror. So a friend had this one laying around and gave it to me, and I think it'll be awesome. We'll mount it up above the seat, and yeah, it'll be nice. So let's get this cleaned up a little bit. All right, sweet. So I'm turning the engine over here real quick to get this thing to top dead center. There's a hole you take a plug out of, this little plug here, and then you take a 3/8 16 bolt, you stick it in there, and once you get to the right spot, it'll thread into the flywheel, and that locks it into the top dead center location. There it goes. I just felt it. Right here, let's see if I can get my hand in there. Right here is the bolt that we're threading into the flywheel. So we turn the engine over with the crankshaft bolt, and I just kind of held that bolt there until I felt it feel some threads, and it kind of just went slid in. So the thing we have to do is make sure that number one is closed, which should mean they're loose. So that one's loose, that one's loose. So you got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so what we're doing here is we're going to check the overhead. We're going to check the valve clearance on all 4 cylinders. So we'll be able to do number 1, and then on number 2 we can do this valve, and number 3 we can do this valve, and then we turn the whole engine over 180 degrees, then we can do number 4, and then we'll be able to do these 2 inside ones. So I'm going to go get a feeler gauge, and we're going to check the valve clearance. I have not done this on this machine, so I think it's a good idea to do that. The other thing I noticed when I took the valve cover off is this gasket was sitting like this, and we've had a little bit of a leak out of that valve cover, and so I need to get a new gasket. I still haven't gotten one, but I don't think it got installed right either, so that could have been an issue. The intake valves are 0.015 inch or 0.38 millimeters, and so the intake, it's intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust, intake, exhaust. So number 1 is always closest to the fan, the radiator. So when we put this here, it's loose. You can hear that, just a little bit of clicking. So we're gonna have to adjust that. And then take on number 2. That one's a lot better. And then exhaust is gonna be 0.25 inch or 0.64 or 635 millimeters. Exhaust on number 1 is close. A little bit tight. So I might loosen that some, and we do exhaust on number 3. It's tight, but I think we will loosen it some because I am worried that the valves are staying open too long, and that's what's causing some of our wet stacking. There we go. Let's get this bolt out, and then what we want to do is turn the engine over 360 degrees. All right, now we are at bottom dead center. We've got 1 closed. We've got number 2's, is that intake closed. The exhaust is open. The number 3's intake is open, exhaust is closed, and the number 4, both valves are open. So if we start with the exhaust, that one should be 0.25. Actually feels pretty good on number 2. And then intake for number 3 actually feels pretty good. And now intake for number 4, that's too tight. I can't even get the gauge in. Well, if I shove it in, I can. And then exhaust for number 4. That's too tight as well. I can shove it in if I put it in hard, but it's a few thou off. So that's how you adjust the valves on most any engine, really. You just loosen these nuts and you twist this flathead in or out, and that brings this adjustment up or down, and then you put a feeler gauge right under here, right under the rocker meets the actual valve stem where the spring is surrounding it, and you basically make sure it has the right amount of play between the valve stem and the rocker when there's no pressure on it, essentially. That's why you put it at top dead center and then at bottom dead center, to be able to get the valves in the right order. There are other ways to do it too. You can You can bar the engine over, find, you know, the right spot. But when an engine has something like a timing bolt you can stick into the flywheel, it ensures that you are exactly where you need to be to do those adjustments rather than having to figure it out for yourself. So yeah, I think we're good here. One quick thing I want to do is I want to re-solder this radiator badge back on. It came off, goes right there. I just think it's kind of cool and I don't want to leave it off, so let's get that cleaned up. A little soldering paste. So I went ahead and tinned the whole badge, and it's on there solid. I wish I could have gotten it to look a little nicer, but I don't want to start melting the actual radiator tank. And it's on there, you can read it, 6N54X. Forever from now, when somebody needs to know what model number or part number that radiator is, it'll be there. All right, next up, let's get the air filter changed before we put this air box back in. Yeah, that's pretty dirty. Oh yeah, see that? It's starting to fall apart. If I stick a light in here, see all those holes in it? That is not good. I think water was definitely getting into this air filter housing. Actually, you can see it right there. See that? It had water up to that level. So, yep, that needs to go. And then I think there's a pre-filter too. That one's pretty rusty. But I don't see any major holes in it. It is dirty. Oh, there's a big hole right there. Right there. Well, I was able to get both filters from Costech Parts. Got the inner filter here, got the outer filter here. I am going to change or clean this out. Let's get this tube off. So I want to get all the dirt and debris and maybe some rust off of here. As you can see in there, you can see the rust line, water line. There is some dirt and debris. I'm getting some fuzzies off of these wipers, so we're going to use some of the microfiber wipers. They're designed to not leave the residual fiber in the, you know, whatever you're wiping. And so I don't want the fibers getting sucked into the engine. And that's why I like these disposable shop-ready ones from Pig. So check this out. So there's 3 mounting bolts, one here, one there, and one here. And this one, they used too long of a bolt, and it poked a hole right through the actual air filter housing. I didn't notice that until right now. So yeah, no matter what you did to put the correct top on to keep water out, water's going to run right down and into the air filter housing, causing the same issue again. So I'm going to have to fix that. We're going to have to weld it. I think I can fold the the little can opener piece back up and put some tacks on it. All right, took a few tries, but was able to get that kind of patched over. It was kind of hard to weld just because of the angle, but take some water here, pour it right over that. Just see if we get any that leaks in. All right, good deal. We're still bone dry. Painted the inside black because I have a lot more black than I do cat yellow. So, all right, so we're gonna let that dry before we paint the outside. So let's jump over onto the pre-cleaner. So this is the air pre-cleaner that goes on the outside, and it sucks air up through here, and then it has this little turbine thing that's supposed to get and collect the dust in this little container here, and then it goes back down. So air comes up through here, kind of is funneled up, and then spins around in here, and then the dirt and dust settle in this cup, and then the clean air is supposed to go down through there. I'm afraid this thing's cracking up. I don't really want to reuse it. I don't want to end up having water in the engine. So I got a new one from Cat. It's the only place I could find it. So that'll go there. This will go on top. Let's get this thing cleaned up, and we're going to paint it too. So I've got one bolt that was broken here. I tried getting it out. Didn't spend too much time. I wasn't too worried about it. And then there's one broken bolt here. And then there was a stud here, here, and here. And other than that, I think this one didn't go in very well. So I'm not sure what the threads are looking like on that. But I bent some of this back. It had some dents. Now that I've got it fixtured here, I'm going to try and bend these out a little bit, try and make it look a little bit nicer. At some point, we're going to do paint on this tractor, but I'm trying to get all the little stuff done and kind of out of the way. Even new hardware, even chasing all the bolt holes with a tap is important to be able to maintain this machine, be able to take these panels off quick and easy. But everything's looking great. Absolutely awesome. Everything's fitting really well. I think next up, we're going to get the exhaust pipe and then maybe the belly pans on. All right, let's get this exhaust pipe on. Painted it with high heat black paint. Rock solid. All right, there we have it. Got it all painted. It's all dried. And inside, as you can see, I painted it all black. Got all the rust out of there. Peel this tape off. I wish I could find some of these old decals, but a lot of them, like this one, are just not available anymore unless you make them custom, and I don't have the ability to do that. Or the time, really. But I'd love to find like a full decal kit. All right, let's put our filters in. That's the secondary filter. This is the main filter. Here's the main filter. There we go. Air filter's all ready to rock and roll. This baby goes on after it's installed, like that. I got the new piece installed in here. Got that all cleaned up and painted. Good enough for now. Let's go install that. All right, putting new hose clamps. These are the ones that have metal all the way around. There we go. Last but not least, the cherry on top. So that thing just sits on there, there's no clamp. And having painted both the inside and the outside of the air filter housing and this pre-cleaner, it fits a heck of a lot tighter than it did before. So I think it'll be fine until it's not. All right, here we've got the belly pan and the front nose. So what we're going to do, it has this hole here. And it also had one right there for the drains. This is for the engine drain, that one's for the transmission. And I want to put something over them so that they're protected in case sticks or something, debris goes up in there. So what I'm thinking is, I had this plate laying around. It's like 3/8 plate. I'll basically put it over the hole like that. We'll drill this hole, and that one. And we'll bolt it with 3 bolts, just like I did here. And that third one will just be a drain. So any water that gets down into the belly pan can drain out. And it's got open avenues to drain as well. And even here you can kind of see there's a little bit of that crack from the hole. And then what we're going to do, I'll show you on this side. I haven't done it yet, but so we're going to put a nut on the inside and we'll just weld it to the pan. That way we can just pull the bolts out and the plate comes off. And then that way it's nice and easy to remove, easy to get access to, but yet still protects it a little bit better. So luckily, unlike Farmcraft, I didn't have to rebuild the nose cone. He was missing his, and I have my belly pan too. But let's protect these holes just a bit more. What? I like that. Can you go put that back on there for me? Thanks. All right, there we go. Got all 3 holes. I ground around all of them so I can weld right to the metal, weld the nuts there, and then that plate's removable. That is going to be one heck of a sturdy cover. 3/8 plate on 1/4 inch plate. Yeah, that'll do it. Same on that one. Sweet, time to get them installed. All right, we slapped some paint on there. It looks a little bit nicer. Not that it really matters. At the end of the day, it's kind of one of those things. It's a skid plate. It's on the bottom. But I had it, and I kind of wanted to paint the bolts and the washers and make them so that they're not going to end up causing any issues or rusting too quick. But on the inside, I threw a little black on the bottom where I welded the nuts. Yeah, much better, a little nicer. Let's get these installed. Here we go. Probably should have used a jack. I got it. All right, I've got all new bolts, washers, putting them in with anti-seize, and I ran a tap through every one of these holes, cleaned them out. That way, the threads are nice and easy to get these started. And then once I get them all tight, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to spray paint all these bolts and the washers to keep them from rusting. One more bolt here somewhere. There it is. There we go. That nose cone is on. Good deal. I got one bolt in, and then it hooks on the front. All right, so real quick, I want to try and straighten this. See how this bottom edge got bent up at some point, and now the pin does not drop in straight. So it's kind of hard to use. This gets jammed in there and makes it so you need a hammer. I'd like to get this bottom part bent straight. So I think what we're going to try and do is break this thing loose. It's 1.5 inches. I've got 1.5 inch socket here. Let's see if it'll bust this loose. Oh yeah, easy. Look at that. Wow, I'm actually impressed. Let's see if this side is easy. Oh yeah, baby. Easy, easy. All right. So again, thank you to the previous mechanic who put anti-seize on those 2 bolts. Let's go see if we can straighten this in the press. So this press is a 50-ton OTC hydraulic press. I've got a video coming out soon. It's going to be on rescuing this thing, but for now, we're going to use it. See, I can retract this up. I have to get a shorter pin, but I'm going to put something hard or flat here, and then if I push down through it, hopefully I can bend this back straight, is the idea. I don't think that worked any. Maybe a little bit. See if this thing drops through any better. Nope, gets stuck. Don't really have any way to wedge anything in there. Wonder if I could get something that's wider than this hole and push it down straight down the middle. Angle like that. Let's give it a try. I think that one's moving. Drops in there a little better. All right, I've got that pin angled at the front bend. Let's see if this will work. I think it is working. A lot of load on that pin. That's definitely open more. Let me grab a hammer. I think that might have worked. Guess we'll find out. We're still a little bit off. Maybe we try it at this angle. Okay. Looks better. Oh yeah, look at that. Straight through. Awesome. There we go. Little ingenuity, and you can do just about anything. I didn't want to use any heat in this because I don't want to mess up. I don't know if this is tempered or not, but I want to be able to keep this as strong as possible. That's why I didn't heat it. So I just wanted to bend it cold. So I think that's going to do for what I want. Perfect. All right, I took it out and used the die grinder on all the edges, kind of cleaned up all the burrs because there were some definite burrs on it. It's not perfect, but it is so much better. It was bent quite a bit up. Let me grab the pin. Straight in. At least we have a usable hitch now. We got a lot done on this little dozer, so it is all back together. Everything is on it except for the 2 engine side covers, which I'm not going to put on right now because when we have it up at the farm, I want to run it and I want to be able to get to the engine if I need to do something to it. So yeah, we are very close. So next step is we're going to do all the pins and bushings on the blade, and I'm going to show you what that takes. And then I'm going to throw some protective covers on a couple hydraulic hoses, and then we're going to go do some dozing with it. A bunch of stuff like the battery box I wasn't planning to do, you know, like adding the little tiny plugs on the bottom of the skid plates I wasn't planning to do. There's a lot of like little things that kind of creep up. It's always the small stuff that ends up causing you a lot more time when you're doing a project like this. So a friend of mine has a small lake that washed out. I don't even know if you'd really call it a lake, kind of just like a valley that they put a dam in. And so probably 10 or 15 years ago, it washed out. So the plan will be to open that back up some and then rebuild the dam. And then probably build a spillway on the side. I don't think they had a spillway, they just had an overflow. And then we're probably gonna push over some dead trees, move some manure. I don't know, we'll get it up there and start using it. It'll be a really good test for this dozer. So I'm totally pumped to have gotten to this point that we can use it, because man, there is nothing better than taking a project all the way through and then being able to use the machine or whatever you create. There's just nothing more satisfying than doing that for yourself. If you've had that feeling for yourself, then you understand. If you haven't had that feeling for yourself, maybe you should try and get it, because you know, there is the joy of ownership, the pride that you get from accomplishing something that you just don't get from anything else. It is one of those things that I truly enjoy, and I love doing that. It's a hard-fought process throughout this whole project, or any project really. I just truly appreciate that you guys come along on the journey with me and enjoy step by step. Sometimes I worry that, you know, it's too many parts, or I'm going into too much detail, or whatever. And so I appreciate you coming back to the channel. I appreciate you watching the videos. It's a huge, huge support to me. If you haven't already subscribed, please do that. Like the video, share the content if you know anybody that might like it. But more than anything, just thanks for being here, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. Take it easy.